Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you are watching on our growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does for the preview podcast, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here for the UNC versus Wofford edition of the preview podcast. Obviously, senior day coming up for the Tar Heels. Noon kickoff in Chapel Hill this Saturday against the Terriers. Carolina sitting at 5-5. Wofford sitting at just 1-9 overall, winless in the SoCon. We're going to dive into Wofford and Carolina here in a little bit, but before we do that, AJ, I want to kind of talk about some news that hit on Monday regarding some of the guys that are walking during senior day. Sam Howell kind of being the most notable one that was announced, obviously, in his junior season. I know we've talked about a lot. We expected Sam to leave. Max told us many a times, even told us on Monday, that he never even, I think the word he uses, never even considered Sam coming back after this year, and has kind of been pushing him to go to the NFL because of his draft stock and everything like that. He's also day-to-day, so his status in terms of him being able to play against Wofford when what would likely be his final game in Chapel Hill is still up in the air. We'll talk about that a little bit more and who might be, getting the nod ahead of him if it goes that here in a little bit. But hey, just your thoughts on kind of the Sam Howell news about him leaving and maybe, any other guys that were on that pretty extensive list of guys that are walking on Saturday that may have surprised you or didn't surprise you.
Connor McMichael was a bit of a surprise.
Same for me. I thought that was
because he's got more eligibility. Theoretically, he could play a couple more years, and but he wants to. I guess he wants to go try his hand at the NFL.
Yeah, that's what Mac alluded to.
Yeah. He's a real talented guy. He'll be in a camp somewhere. Maybe he figures that's best for him. I would imagine he's probably ready to graduate. He's been in college. This is his fourth year in college.
Good point, yeah.
You only have a small window of time where your body can let you do this. So I don't have any qualms with any kid who thinks he's ready to go give it a shot, Yeah. And if it doesn't work out, he's got his degree. He's not in any debt. And Connor's a smart guy. He'll find something to do. Maybe he can coach. I mean, there's a lot of these kids can get into coaching.
Oh, yeah.
Sam was no surprise. We've talked about it. And I know that people are already floating out their little theories about what's going behind this, but I'm not going to go all, maybe this is going on in everybody. I know people want us to, but I can see certain scenarios playing out. Number one, the thing I really enjoy about covering Mack Brown is Mack is rather transparent, certainly more so than most coaches. I've said this before, and I know this is your favorite term, but most college football coaches think that they're planning the D-Day invasion.
Oh, I love that, man. It's so true. It's so true.
And it's just unbelievable. They don't give you an inch.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
A guy had his legs amputated in the middle of the week, and they're like, well, he's day-to-day. We're not going to give the information. And it's an upper body injury, that kind of stuff. Carolina doesn't tell us everything. They shouldn't tell us everything, and they don't need to tell us everything, but they tell us a lot. And I'm a big believer in following everything Max says, and maybe something he said in August comes back to my mind in October, and I say, okay, I'm connecting some dots here. But when Max said repeatedly, well, I wouldn't say repeatedly, but multiple times in August, we got to find a way to get these young quarterbacks on the field because we need to get ready for next year. He's never made any bones about the fact they didn't expect Sam to come back. The reason it was news Monday is because it was confirmed. So, yes, it's news. The day-to-day for this week doesn't surprise me at all. I had some information over the weekend, more than what the rumor mill was saying, that this could happen. In fact, the information was, well, maybe he doesn't play again. And that would not surprise me. It would not surprise me if he's out there in Raleigh and he wants to beat NC State because he's such an uber competitive kid. Or as he likes to use the word super, I'll say he's a super competitive kid. And he would love to be in that situation. But if you think about it, what does Sam have left to gain? He's gotten beaten up since. He's been sacked 39 times. He's run the ball a bunch this year. He's been under duress since the first snap in Blacksburg.
Yeah, literally.
And he's actually turned in an outstanding season. It's not being viewed that way by a lot of people because there have been some picks. There have been some questionable plays at times, but I think a lot of that was because he's under duress.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of stuff that hasn't worked around him that people thought was going to work. And I'm sitting there watching NC State and Wake the other night. I'm like, man, I mean, State, I kudos to Wake for figuring out a way to score 45 points against that defense.
Yeah, most definitely.
When Sam Hartman was off.
Yeah, he was.
And that right there is the genius of Dave Clawson.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I love State's defense.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought Drake Thomas was going to be real good. And he's a damn good ACC.
Yeah, he's big time, yeah.
And he'd be licking his chops to pop Sam. they got dudes that can pop.
Oh, yeah.
Does Sam need that?
It's a good point.
He doesn't need to play this weekend. Look, they're going to beat Wofford. No disrespect to Wofford, but Wofford is horrible. They're horrible at the FCS level. So Jefferson Boaz could take every snap at quarterback this week, and Carolina could name the score. I truly believe that. So they're going to get their bowl game. They're going to get their extra practices in December. And Sam very unlikely would play in a bowl game. So whoever the quarterback of the future is going to get a lot of reps in that game, right? Well, get him reps this week. And I think, you look at Criswell and May. I have my opinion about who I think is probably going to get the nod ultimately in that situation. Again, listen to what Max says, Jacob. When he starts talking about, well, we got to get a guy ready for next year. We got to worry about red shirt. Well, Criswell's played in 3 games this year, and May's played in 2. 4 games is a red shirt number. Mac made a point Monday saying Criswell gets last year back, so he's essentially a freshman this year. And if he only plays in 1 more game, this is a red shirt year. So if he left, he could go somewhere and have 4 seasons. He could have a full career somewhere else and already have 2 years of college under his belt, 2 years of learning under Phil Longo. He's gotten dramatically better since he arrived at Carolina. They trust him if he was thrust into a game right now. But maybe Drake May is the guy of the future. Maybe you get Criswell a lot of stuff on film this weekend so he can shop around to other schools, and Drake May's the guy in Raleigh. Yeah. And Drake May's the guy in the bowl game. And they go into the offseason with Drake May getting 180 snaps, throwing the ball 70 times. And think of all that film. If he doesn't get those reps, the film work that he and Phil Longo would do in January and February and on into the spring wouldn't have the same value. Yeah. But get him out there, get him in a hostile environment, get his feet wet, throw him to the fire. And a lot of the mistakes he makes now, he won't make next September and October. So you're ahead of the game there. I'm a big believer in that. And I think that would be an understandable way to go. I think it would be totally understandable if Sam didn't play again. He set the records. He's given everything he possibly can to this university. Some people are like, he's 20 and 15. That's one player doesn't win football games.
Yeah, no. So, imagine what that record might look like if he wasn't a part of the program. Because
they had an average defense.
We've had a lot of 3 things videos where
if they had an average defense this year, they'd be 9-1.
Oh, absolutely.
No other way around it. And Sam would be ballyhooed.
Yeah, he'd be all over the conversation, national conversation.
And I was in Pittsburgh, and there were 39 NFL scouts up there, and I can tell you right now, they absolutely adore his competitiveness. One of the things that has really come out of this season, before Sam was kind of considered, a precision, chuck it around kind of guy. A little bit of grit to him, but he's been all grit this year, and he's still throwing for a ton of yards. Mm-hmm. His running has been amazing. He still has put them in positions to win games. Mm-hmm. They have other issues, and he's not the issue. So I think if you're looking at the future of North Carolina football, it's probably best he doesn't play. I know a lot of Carolina fans are like, we got to beat State. We got to beat State. 6-6 or 7-5. Charlotte's going to take Carolina if Charlotte can take Carolina in the bowl game, whether it's 6-6 or 7-5. So shouldn't matter. I mean, you want to win that game. Absolutely. I understand the hatred that they have for State, but I think it's more important to get as ready at that position for next year as possible. And by the way, I was just laying out a scenario. I'm not laying out a prediction.
Yeah.
The other scenario would be that Sam doesn't play this weekend. He plays against NC State, then opts out of the bowl game. But being injured, it's an easy sell not to play against State, and it's not worth the risk. Mm-hmm. He's staring at $30 million. He's done everything he possibly can for the school.
Yeah, no doubt.
What else can he do? At what point does he have to make a personal decision where, you know what, guys, I wasn't selfish with the NIL. I got my guys involved. I got the linemen involved. I've been a team guy all along. He's been a great recruiter for the program. He has never been about Sam Howell. But at some point, you have to make that decision. We all have points in our lives where we have to make the best decision for us. And I think that time is now for him. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some urging from the program. Look, it's not worth it. We'll be fine. We're going to our bowl game. We're going to take care of Wofford. We're going to get those extra practices. We're going to get the youngins out there, the young ones, Mac likes to say, and we'll be okay. You've done everything you can for us. It's time for us to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens. And if it doesn't and Sam plays against NC State and he goes in there and tries to grit them to Tar Heels to win, it'd be a great story. That wouldn't surprise me either. Mm-hmm. But I can't imagine he would play in a bowl game, and I can't imagine he'll play this weekend. Maybe take a courtesy snap and be done, but that's not even worth it.
No.
There's no point in risking $30 million.
No, there isn't. I mean, I know when I first heard the news on Monday and saw it on Twitter in the morning, it was I think we were texting kind of back and forth about it too. And I was like, in the long run, I think this is more beneficial for the longevity of the program going into next year, because you got a team that's sitting in 5-5. It's not like Carolina's playing for anything. Their goals for the season, which were stated missions of, competing for an ACC championship, winning the Coastal Division, went out the door completely with the loss against Pittsburgh. Now you're looking ahead, playing a team in Wofford, team in state, and a bowl game, like you mentioned. If you can get a guy out there like Drake May or Jacoby Criswell, maybe even both of them, getting those reps, that's going to benefit you a lot more going into next year than, playing Sam against Wofford. Doesn't matter. It's a win. It's a waste of time. Playing him against State, I get it from a fan's perspective, 100%. But you've secured that bowl eligibility after you beat Wofford. I'm assuming that's going to happen. A pretty safe bet there. I get wanting to beat them and having the best chance to beat them.
Well, and going 3-0, and now we go 3-0 against State, Duke, and Wake.
Yeah, I mean, and that's big for.
I guess they can make a ring for that, right? Didn't you?
Yeah, they had the ring for that.
Did you have that tweet?
I had that tweet. Got a little backfire from that one.
That didn't resonate too well among some circles, which I understand. And by the way, I understand your tweet. Mm-hmm. I understand why it didn't resonate well with some circles, and I kind of on both sides of the fence on that one. But they do have a chance to win the mythical state championship that Matt created his first time at Carolina, which I don't have a problem with.
No, I
think you have to celebrate success.
No doubt.
College football, unfortunately, has become a sport where if you're not in contention with the CFP, you don't matter.
I hate it.
And therefore, your accomplishments don't matter. And I totally disagree with that. Mm-hmm. I like back in the day, I remember Mac's first run. They beat Southern Cal in the Disney Pigskin Classic or something in Anaheim. And they knocked the living crap out of Southern Cal. And I'll never forget a picture Carolina ran the media got for years of Mac holding up that trophy afterward. And he was so proud and so happy.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was an achievement. Mm-hmm. You win a bowl, you win the Sun Bowl, or you win the Gator Bowl in the 90s. That was Gator Bowl champions. Yeah. That meant something.
Not anymore.
We've diminished anything outside of the top 8 teams in the country. Mm-hmm. All anybody's talking about right now is Michigan State.
Yeah.
And nobody else matters. And so I actually think it's cool that Mac understands there's so many achievements to celebrate. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to celebrate them. Who cares what the outside world thinks? Mm-hmm. We're going to celebrate them within the walls of this program. And that's the culture that we have. So I'm cool with that. So Sam may say, hell yeah, I want to go 3-0 against those guys.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to win the state championship. I want that ring. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of athletes that I've covered over the years that like at the pro level stuff that went on to have national success, even international success. And sometimes their high school championship ring is the one that they're most proud of. Yeah. That's the one that nobody knows about, right? Outside of their community they grew up in. Mm-hmm. These kind of things are very important to a lot of these guys. And if it's motivation for Sam to play, maybe that's why he does. Yeah. He does. But I think from a purely personal Sam Howell Incorporated standpoint, there's no reason to play.
No.
And if he didn't play, I would write a column saying, good for you. You made a good decision. Times have changed. People that want to look at college sports landscape through a 1985 lens are doing a big mistake. They're making a huge mistake.
No, the times have changed a lot. I mean,
I think some of the 1985 intangibles can still be there.
Oh yeah,
and I think that's part of what Mac's trying to preserve. If they do beat State and they each get a ring for going 3-0 against in-state schools, more power to them.
Oh, no doubt. And he was even just going back to during the Pittsburgh game, the amount of close-up shots I saw of Sam. He's got bruises all over his arms, Band-Aids on his arms, scratches everywhere. I mean, the kid's beat up.
Oh,
And then,
big time.
bring him, get involved a little bit of an injury in there. You can't blame the kid at all for sitting out. And like you said, at the end of the day, you got to look after number one at a certain point in your time and yourself. So,
Jacob, in each of the last 4 games, there's been a point where he's gotten up slower than the game before.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
And I can't begin to express the respect that I have for him as a competitor. I've compared him. I covered Russell Wilson a ton when he was at NC State. And for people who don't know, I've done this for a long time. Haven't just covered Carolina. And I really appreciated the things that made Russell Wilson go the way Russell Wilson goes. He very much operated in a tunnel, a lot like Sam does.
Internally motivated. Yeah.
Very few outside interests that get him off his course. Very internally motivated. Deep faith. Know who they are, mature beyond their years, similar players, similar strengths and qualities, guys that people said they're not big enough, guys that people said maybe they're not athletic. Russell was probably considered a little bit more athletic. Both baseball players.
Yep.
Russell was probably a little bit better baseball player. Sam was higher rated in high school than Russell was. Russell got passed over. Had an interesting conversation on our message boards with Mr. Blutarski on the boards about, he's from the area where Russell's from, and kind of talking about how Al Groh passed him over and John Bunning passed him over and kind of ended up at NC State. And I remember covering the spring game. Russell's, after his first year, going into his redshirt freshman year, he was the 4th best looking quarterback at the spring game. Harrison Beck looked better. And look what Russell became. Sam had a different path to get to where he is, but I think he's fueled by the similar things.
No doubt.
And I think the way that people have kind of dismissed him this year will fuel him even more moving forward. Mm-hmm. And again, it goes back to him, whatever he does the next couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. I support whatever decision he makes because it's his decision, his body, and his career, number one. But number two, it makes a lot of sense if he doesn't play. And I agree with you 100%. I think North Carolina football is a much, much, much better situation if they can get Drake May and Jacoby Criswell out there now, make a decision on who the guy is going to be moving forward now, so they can move forward, and the guy that's not going to get the job can move forward. And if he chooses to find a new home, he goes and finds a new home, and Carolina would help him with that, and everybody's happy. And we go into next season not with a massive question mark hanging over the quarterback position on a team that should be better. Of course, we said that last year too, so who the heck knows?
Yeah, that's a good point. Who the heck knows at this point? And the last thing I'll say about Sam, I've been on the sidelines a couple of times this year, but going back to that Miami game, man, the amount of times where he was just popped. And I'm 20 yards away from it, sometimes 10 yards away from it, less than that. And it's just, there was a few moments during that game that you're just like, I don't know how he just gets up like that. I mean, just, when a quarterback's running, it's so evident, especially with Sam, that guys are just trying to take his head off. And I think that's one of the reasons he's able at times to bounce off of defenders, because guys don't go to wrap him up. They just go to lead with the shoulder and hit him as hard as they can. But yeah, he's just been beat up this year, man. And it's what happens when you're running as much as
One more thing on Sam. And again, this goes back to the personal business decision. The NFL Combine's in 3 months.
Yep.
He's got to have time to recover.
100%. Yeah.
He's got to have time to unplug, to recover, and then begin preparing for the Combine.
Mm-hmm.
That takes time. You just don't walk in there and just, hey, I'm Sam Howell.
I'm ready to go.
Ready to roll.
Yeah.
He's human. He's got to recover. He's taking a beating, like you said. I mean, you've seen it. Jen has seen it up close to the field. Kevin has.
No doubt.
He's a human being. He's got to recover. It takes time. You got to decompress. You've got to cut the cord and walk away for a couple of weeks and then come back.
No doubt.
And then slowly begin toward that process, get ready for the Combine, because that's where he's going to put the exclamation mark on wherever he ends up being selected. Mm-hmm. So for the 847th time, it wouldn't be a bad thing if he just moves on.
No, I think it's better for the future of the program as a whole. But yeah, let's move on from that Sam Howell talk. We'll go, obviously got to touch on the matchup a little bit. Like we said earlier, Carolina versus Wofford, noon kickoff in Chapel Hill. Wofford, a team that's really struggled this year, at the FCS level. Winless in the SoCon. Actually, their first and only win of the year was their first game at Elon, 24-22. Haven't won since then. You got some close losses in there. I mean, just looking at their schedule, a 6-point loss at East Tennessee State, 3-point loss to Samford. What else is in here? 1 point loss actually in the last game at the Citadel, 45-44. Some other close games in there as well. So it's not a team that's, just getting blown out every week, but they have had some games where they've, lost by 20, 30 plus points. So just a team that, in a Wofford program that has, historically been relatively, decent program, just kind of struggling this year. And coming into Chapel Hill, last game of the year for them, Carolina's senior day, you'd expect a pretty easy win, despite if Sam Howell plays or not, like you talked about a little bit earlier. So, I don't really want to go in depth like we usually do on the preview podcast of, what does Carolina have to do to win? I know Mac Brown talked about it a lot on Monday, that it's about, and one thing he really hit on and we've hit on a lot, when it comes to these games against lesser opponents that you're expected to win, A, you've got to have a good week of practice. You got to prepare like you always do. B, you got to show up on game day, and C, you got to play just as hard as you play against, last Thursday night at Pittsburgh. You got to have that consistent effort, not only to beat Wofford, which is, should be a little bit easier than beating a team like Pitt, you would think, but to build that kind of standard in the program that we've talked about for so many times going back to, when Mac first came in. So just to kind of focus on them for a second, is it just about Carolina being Carolina this weekend, preparing as they should, preparing as if they're playing the number 5 team in the country? It doesn't matter. You've got to take care of yourself, and everything else will kind of take care of itself too.
Yeah, proper preparation is a culture.
Yep.
This is a culture week. Your culture's tested in a week like this. And I think that, they're still in the process of building the culture. Now, I do think they have a pretty solid culture in place that is certainly on the way to being fully fortified. The fact that these guys haven't given up. They didn't wilt in Pittsburgh, and they very easily could have. They found a way when it seemed like they were taking on insurmountable water against Miami. It looked like Notre Dame had delivered the knockout blow, and it didn't. Carolina kept fighting. And then you look at what they did against Wake. So I like the resiliency in the program. I like how that culture's been fortified, but you don't want to lose that this week.
Yeah,
you got to go out and take care of business right away. As Max said, go give the other team a chance to feel good about itself, because a lot of stuff can happen in football. And Wofford is a program with pride. I'll tell you what, I've been down there before. I've covered basketball down there when Carolina played there, but football, the Panthers training camp is there.
Yeah, it's a nice facility.
So when I covered the Panthers, I used to spend a week down there, and I was on Wofford's campus for a week basically, and they have fantastic facilities. And they take a lot of pride in the fact that the Panthers train down there, and that program has a lot of pride. You walk around there, there's a lot, for their level, there's a lot of great players that have come through there. They love the way that their offensive system was when everyone else was changing to different stuff, and they stuck with that. They like that. And there's definitely has been a culture there. So they're in a bit of transition right now, but they're still going to play with pride. And look, people say, well, what do they got to play for? Well, they have a chance to ruin Carolina's season. And Mac pointed out Monday about Samford. I don't know if whoever's watching, if you don't know this, Florida trailed Samford last weekend 42-35 at the half. Samford beat Wofford by a field goal. Samford's 4-6, so they're not a good FCS team. Yet they led Florida at the half, and it was 56-52 Florida with about 9 minutes left. Florida ended up winning 70-52. Samford, 52 points, 530 yards, 28 first downs against the Gators. That game will ultimately be the final straw for Dan Mullen, I think. He'll get ag. And that's a train that's completely gone off course, and it's just plowing through the wilderness right now. And Samford helped contribute to that. So you don't want that happening in Chapel Hill. I would think, even though Florida's kind of gone off the rails, it might be a better team than Carolina. Yeah. So maybe things are comparable there. You got to take care of business, whether Sam plays or not. Don't think he's going to play. You got to take care of business. And the value of what Carolina can get out of this is preparing as if Notre Dame's coming to town.
Yep.
And preparing to win a game and going out there and doing the things they're supposed to do. Don't get 2 pass interferences and a face mask and an illegal block and an illegal substitution in the first quarter. I mean, if they're having crap like that again, then there's a serious, serious problem. Penalties have been a big issue for this team the last 5 games. Mac kind of theoretically threw up his arms. There it is. I don't know. I mean, Then he kind of went the route. Well, Bobby Bowden's teams are always penalized. And Bobby said, well, the more talented, better you are, the more penalties you get on, because you always have the ball in offense and all that kind of stuff. I get that. I remember Bowden used to almost shrug off the penalties because he had the talent that could make up for it. North Carolina currently does not have enough talent to make up for 105 yards of penalties a game, which is what they're averaging in the last 5 games. So a game like this, you got to be clean. You got to take care of business. You got to be ready to play. You got to pop. Get the starters out of there. Get a lead. Get rah-rah in the game. Get the Andre Boykins in the game. Get some of the reserve offensive linemen in the game to give them a bunch of reps. Get down to Elijah Green carrying the ball some.
Yeah, young guys.
Let's get J.J. Jones and Gavin Blackwell, a lot of run at receiver. That's what this can be about, but you've got to take care of business early on in order for it to be about that. And then this game carries tremendous amount of value because the game reps those kids are going to get are so valuable, not just now, but they have stuff in the off season. They get a little skip in their step getting into a game and being involved in a victory, and it could carry them a long way.
No doubt. Yeah, no, I think getting the young guys involved, potentially get some other quarterbacks in there depending on what happens with Sam. That's big. It's big positives for this team because you need those reps. They haven't been able to play as many young guys maybe as at times as they might have expected before the year with the season they were maybe expecting to have. So anytime you can take advantage of that and get that on tape going into next year, it's so huge. We talk about that a lot, but it really is critical. Instead of watching practice reps and mop-ups reps, now you're watching real live game reps when it matters. You can really grade yourself out a lot better than that. So yeah, it should be a game that Carolina should win. That's kind of why we've taken a little bit different form. We don't dive into specifics on Wofford. I know they got some guys that can hurt you. You got particularly a pretty good running back as well. I think he's rushed for over 800 yards. So they've got some guys that can make plays out there, but overall just been a season for Wofford to forget, I think it's safe to say. So AJ, as we always do, let's get into prediction time. And it's probably not going to be a controversial one today, to say the least. I think I picked 52-17 on my staff picks. So, comfortable win. I expect Carolina to put up points. I think Wofford.
I actually did mine. I've already done my staff picks. It's usually about that, but I don't remember what my score was.
I think mine was 52-17. I know I had Wofford scoring 17.
I think I had like 66-7 or something like that.
Yeah, I think Wofford.
It should be something like that. And that's, again, we're not disrespecting Wofford, but look, Carolina, they can go one of two ways here. They can just be flat, not play well,
emotions,
turn the ball over and have penalties and that kind of junk, give up a couple big plays. Or they could be out just to have a hell of a good time.
Yeah.
And just take out a lot of frustration on somebody. I'm kind of leaning in that direction.
Yeah, I kind of am too. We've seen it against Mercer in previous years under Mac. That was I remember being on the sidelines for that one. And that was just a fun time for the kids. It was an easy win for them. A lot of guys get reps. That's always good for, some of the starters to see some of the guys that don't play get out there and do something. That's always pretty fun for them and kind of funny to see. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, no disrespect to Wofford. It's just, if they're sitting at 9-1 right now, maybe we're having a little bit different. It's still a game for Carolina to win, but we're having a different conversation. But when you just look at the struggles they've had, I mean, lost 9 straight essentially. It's just, at the FCS level, not very good. So, yeah, it should be a win for Carolina, and we'll kind of see what happens. But, yeah, this coming up, final game of the season in Chapel Hill for the Tar Heels. Got a basketball game quickly following that, 4 p.m. tip-off against Purdue. Heck of a basketball game coming right after that.
Yeah, and for the people who follow us on Twitter, I will not be at the football game. I'm going to be up in Connecticut for basketball. Brandon P. and Noah Stabrowski will be in the press box, and we'll be all over the football stuff and the basketball stuff. We're going to have a loaded day on Saturday, plus basketball Sunday. Yeah. They play the Tennessee or Villanova on Sunday. So
busy weekend.
And then I got to fly. I couldn't get a flight out Sunday night, so I got to fly home first thing Sunday morning. I will walk through the door of my house about 20 minutes before Max NC State press conference.
I love it, man. Gotta love it right there. It's that time of year, guys. I don't know if
the overlap.
The
overlap is winning.
If you're familiar with the sports journalism world, even familiar with us in Carolina sports, that the overlap between November and December can get pretty hectic. So
I think it's a grind for fans too.
Oh yeah, so much stuff going on. You got a football game at 12, basketball game at 4. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. A tough basketball game, like I said too, against number 6 Purdue. It's going to be a tough matchup for Carolina, but expecting a pretty relatively easy win for the Tar Heels in football on Saturday, at least to get them to bowl eligibility. And, that's a big plus for the program going into the remaining or the final game, I should say, at NC State on November 26th. So, AJ, I think that's a good point to wrap this one up. Don't want to keep everybody too long on here. I know you're actually in the process of heading down to Charleston here soon as well.
Yeah, I'm leaving in about 15 minutes.
We record these a couple of days early before we release them if guys don't know yet. But yeah, AJ's got to.
And I have a 5-month-old puppy shredding the carpet in my office right now, literally shredding it. So I just threw my cell phone over there a second ago saying, "Come on, dude."
Hey man, I couldn't even tell. That was pretty impressive. I couldn't even tell you threw anything over there. It's good stuff right there.
I've become slick in my old age.
Hey, I love it, man. Hey, we'll let you run and handle that before you head down to Charleston. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. for all your basketball coverage, all your football coverage, make sure you keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com. And, of course, keep it locked to our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, as well. Like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell as well so you know every single time we upload. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.